I just wanted to start off with the thing that I have on the first slide here in the top left-hand corner, which is that the quote that Nathan Akers put onto his post for LinkedIn. And I wanted to say that this really does encapsulate the essence of what it is that we are trying to look at today. And that is that it's the same why, just a different how. And you'll see that as we go through this. And I was thinking in terms of what Rich Watkins said on the third of our modules, where he talked in terms of collaboration. And he said that collaboration is similar to working in the garden, where you have to look after it, you have to deal with it and tend to it. There are various different jobs that you have to do. Now, one of these jobs is what we're going to be looking at in terms of coaching. And to continue the garden analogy, it's very much like planting a plant. Having a plant there, when you put a plant into the ground, essentially what you're looking at is you're looking at the need for it to have the best environment in which to grow. And so what you do is that you add fertilizer to it to make it grow. You put it in the right position or in the garden so that it has sufficient sunlight. And you water it in order to help it grow. You give it all the nourishment it needs. But the one thing you cannot do as a leader or as a manager, the one thing is you cannot make it grow. It has to do that itself. The responsibility for that growth is for the plant itself. And so it is with us. So it is with our people. There's no magical sort of dust that you can sprinkle onto your people and suddenly they will grow unless the environment is right for them to do so. So what we're going to look at here is how can I make the right environment, being so far away from my people in my teams, how can I get the right environment for them to develop and to grow? And what do I have to do? What's my role in that? Now, it's really interesting when you look at coaching that there are really two schools of thought. Some people consider coaching to be an essential part of their organization and the way in which they expect their leaders and managers to operate. They want it to be part of a corporate culture and part of the role of a leader or a manager. Whereas the other school of thought is that this is a time-consuming process that I'm expected to do when actually it is a small, insignificant part of my role and I'm judged on other things like getting results and my own personal performance. Some people consider it to be difficult. They find that when they do it, they feel incredibly patronizing. Others see it as a simple tick in the box exercise to get it done as quickly as possible. But it's really interesting, I think, to understand why people feel such a different spectrum of things with regards to this task of coaching and where those thoughts come about. In the research that's been done into coaching, there are 5 reasons why we want to be coached, why we feel we will benefit from somebody coaching us. And the top 5 things are this. The first thing is that we want to have somebody as a sounding board. In other words, we want to talk to someone to see whether we're doing things the right way, whether it's there's a better way out there that we could be doing it, etc., to get some ideas, to bounce some thoughts off of each other. 78% stated that they were looking for somebody to be a motivator, somebody who could motivate them to do something better, someone to inspire them, someone who could deal with that part of their capability. 57% were simply looking for a friend. Now, when we talk in terms of a friend, we are looking for a coach who will be friendly, who will not be saying, well, unless you do this, your job's on the line, mate. So essentially, we're looking for that tone, that quality of a friendship within that of the coach. And you'll see that when we go down to less than 50%, we've got a business consultant and we've got a teacher. In other words, some sort of more formal type of education, some sort of formal approach that we're looking for there. Now, if we flip that, that's what the person being coached is looking for. But if we flip that over and we look at the reasons why coaches think they should be coaching, we come up with something completely different here. So here are the 4 reasons why we think we should coach. And the first thing is that we think that we are there to coach somebody in order to improve their performance, to get results, to do something better with the amount of time that we've got or the capability that we have. It's in order to get better results. The second thing is that we're looking to overcome some sort of obstacle, so that the inference being you have a problem. I am here as your coach to help you to get over that particular problem. The third one is to provide some form of direction, and here is the issue that we're going to tell them, we're going to teach them, we're going to get them to do something differently, and as a coach I'm going to show you how. And finally, we look at exploring the possibilities. So here we're looking at other options, we're looking at other avenues, we're doing some form of brain dumping, brain showering, or whatever you call it. But my question here is, if this is the role of the coach, then surely it's just quicker to tell somebody how to do it. Surely it's quicker just to say, do it this way. It's going to get better results, surely. It's going to be quicker, more time efficient. So what is the reason why we don't coach? And I think that the reason why we don't coach is because it comes down to these 3 things here. Firstly, we look at the time pressures that we're under in our day-to-day job, and we see that coaching actually adds pressure to that. It adds an extra dimension, something else, another task that we have to perform, and we don't necessarily have the time to do it, and it's not a priority. It's not become a part of the job which we're going to get measured on, so therefore it's not a priority. Particularly, this comes into play when we're looking at reactive work, the important and urgent, which is where we're always chasing the game, as it were. And it's very easy to sit back and say, I have no time to do this coaching thing. Second is that we have a misconception of coaching. It was really interesting that I had just recently the opportunity to go in and facilitate discussion with one of the leading banks in the UK over this whole concept of what is coaching. And it transpired that throughout the conversation, that really there were 2 concepts of what coaching actually is. And the first one, which is where the misconception kind of issue arises, was that people were considering that coaching was actually a formal thing that I had to prepare a load of data for. I had to get the forms in order to do so I could record all of the issues, etc., etc. And then I would schedule my coaching session with the individual so that they knew that this was them being coached. And I think it's something more than that. That's a form of coaching. It's not the only form of coaching. And what I want to look at is the capability of coaching, but in a more potentially fluid way that we can do whilst we're working remotely or in isolation. And the third issue that we have here is that of lack of a coaching culture within an organisation. So some organisations, whilst they might like to have a coaching culture, they don't necessarily have this throughout the whole of the company. It's not through from the top all the way down to the bottom. And in fact, CEO very seldom will have a coaching session with his individual or her individual direct reports. The board of directors, for example, they are just left to get on and do it. Whereas coaching culture seems to happen some far somewhere further down in the hierarchy of an organisation. So subsequently, when a manager is confronted, do I coach or not coach, they look to the people who are above them, see that they're not coaching, and therefore it takes a less of a priority, and the coaching culture, if I can say it right, doesn't really come through in the organisation. It needs to be a top-down approach. So, what actually is coaching? And I really thought it was probably a good idea to really kind of focus down on what coaching actually is here. And I'm going to use this model here because I feel that it separates coaching from other forms of development that a manager is also expected to do in order to help an individual achieve its full potential. And it's a thing called situational leadership. Situational leadership was originally brought up or conceived by two men, Ken Blanchard and Hershey. Now, essentially, it's a four-stage process for someone to complete a task, to perform a task. And it starts with the bottom right-hand corner, where somebody is completely ignorant of how to do the task. They've never done it before, have no idea how to do it. And so subsequently, we're looking at the need for the manager or the leader is to direct them, is to tell them, this is what you need to do, this is when you need to do it now, etc., etc. And there's little or no kind of emotional support in that process. It's purely just following a list of tasks. After they've gained a bit of experience, they then move into the second phase that we've got the label coaching against. So they've had some experience, they've had some success, but they've also had plenty of failure as well. Subsequently, their enthusiasm perhaps is challenged. They are lacking some form of encouragement or desire to do it. They probably, maybe have thrown their hands up in the air and said, I can't do this, it's too difficult, etc., etc. That's not to say that they know exactly what to do every time, and the memory being what it is, it needs to repeat an exercise several times before it is committed to habit. So subsequently, there may be a little bit of teaching that needs to occur as well. Now, by the time that they have reached a level of competence that you are happy to let them to do it themselves without you looking over their shoulder, that doesn't necessarily mean that emotionally they're ready to take the reins, because they still need some element of support. So the third element that we have here is that supporting role. Now, I kind of link this to being a mentor, because there is no teaching that needs to happen here. There's no education. They know what to do. It's just they don't have the confidence to do it on their own. So the role of the leader here is to mentor them, is to show them that actually they're more than capable, they know what they're doing, and they can do it. It's just they need that confidence. And so finally, we have the last of the squares that we have here, that of delegation. It's a case of, you can do it, go and do it, and tell me when it's done. Now you'll notice that I put a blue line straight down the middle of this, and on the right hand side it's who owns the output of this task. On the right hand side, it is the responsibility of the leader to ensure that this task is done. The leader may have to step in, may have to. On the left hand side of the diagram, the ownership of the completion of the task and the quality of that completion of the task sits squarely on the shoulders of the individual. Our job as coaches is to move the individual over onto that left-hand side so that they take responsibility for the completion of the task. And the way that we get them there is through the box of coaching. So, what we're looking at here, as the diagram clearly says, is a bit of education and a bit of emotional support or enthusiasm, motivation, etc. This we can do. We can do wherever we are. We can do whenever we speak to somebody. We don't have to have it as a formal thing. We can have it, in fact, as just a part of a chat on a telephone call. So I've produced this speedy coaching for you for when we're working remotely. And it's really focusing down on two things. One is, what does this individual need to know? What do they need to know in terms of the theoretical or the process or the task that they need to perform? The second thing is, how do they feel about doing this task? So the emotional aspect of this, what support do I need to give them in order to help them be committed, in order to help them feel enthusiastic and motivated to do it? This is coaching. This is what we can do quickly and remotely. So let's put this into practice now. And what I would like you to do is to take a fresh sheet of paper, and I'm going to ask you to jot down your responses to several of these questions. Number one, I want you to think of a member of your team that you believe could benefit from some form of coaching. Put their name down. Okay. Once you've done that, second thing is, I want you to write down a task that they are not performing totally satisfactorily, or you feel that they could get better at, or you feel that there is area for improvement that they could achieve a greater potential by doing. What's the task? So number one, the name. Number two, what's the task? Okay? And the third thing I want you to jot down is, I want you to define what knowledge they lack or what emotional support they need in order to perform that task better. So it's the knowledge that they lack or the emotional support that they need. Perhaps they need a little bit of both. Define it. Be specific. So now you have the precise element that you are to coach. It's not the great broad expanse of things that the whole performance that you need to coach. It's the elements that is going to make them better at performing that task or improve their aptitude or capability to do that task. And over this next week, what I want you to do is I want you to focus on having conversations, just slipping into any chats that you have, the coaching on this particular aspect. So it may be just building up their confidence, saying, look, I know you can do this because you're really good at doing that, building their confidence. It may be to give them some form of responsibility by saying, I want you to have a go at going solo on this particular task because you've had a go now, and I want to see how you get on with that. But I'm always going to be here to support you if you get stuck. It's that type of approach. Focus on that specifically. So let's just finish off by looking at an example here. So we've got a team here of salespeople, and the salesperson that I specifically want to look at coaching is that of Eve. So Eve is an experienced salesperson. She's been in the team for a while. She is a decent performer. She is a single mother, as you can see from the picture there. She has a 10-year-old daughter who she's in lockdown with. In addition to that, she, whenever you have conversations with her, she gives the impression of being very calm, very altogether kind of individual. She's got composure. But over the last period of a couple of months or so, since this lockdown period of March, her results have struggled. She's not got as good results of that of her colleagues. You've noticed also that she's become withdrawn in team meetings. Others are quite happy to contribute. She takes a quieter role. Doesn't seem quite like her. However, when you have one-to-ones with her, she appears to be quite upbeat. she appears to be quite enthusiastic and appearing that nothing is wrong at all. And when you look at her past performance, well, she's awesome at closing deals. She's great at negotiating with customers and clients. Yet you know that she's always disliked the whole concept of cold calling or meeting people for the first time in exhibitions and whatnot. So my question is, what do you focus on? What automatically do you gravitate towards? And I would suggest that probably the thing that we all kind of look towards is the cold calling. She needs help with cold calling. Let's take her through a cold calling approach. Get a bit more enthusiastic and motivated and savvy on how to do the cold calling. But in reality, folks, what she needed help with was the whole emotional support of dealing with the whole concept of working from home, balancing work with looking after the child, educating her daughter from home, looking after the house, doing the shopping, doing the cooking, and also trying to fit work into all of that as well. Her need was for how do I balance all of these aspects of my life? And that's why her results were suffering. So I want to leave you really with this slide again. Over the course of the coming week, I want you to focus on coaching individuals through really defining what do they need to know and what emotional support do they require, and then just finding ways of doing that by text or by chats or through conversation. Thank you.